What are your craziest babysitter stories? Either with you being the babysitter or the baby. I'll go first. One time, when I was 12, I caught my babysitter, who was probably 17 at the time, smoking a joint. I had no idea it was pot. I just thought it was a funny looking cigarette. Anyway, she told me not to tell my mom, but I just stared at her blankly. Then she got really red in the face and nervously said, "If you promise not to tell anyone, I'll let you see my boobs." I got all excited and embarrassed and bashfully agreed. I've told many of my friends throughout the years, so I ended up breaking the promise. Early in my childhood, my mom was a single parent, and I regularly had 16-20-year-old male babysitters. They used to smoke pot in the bathroom, but since I was only 6-10 years old, I didn't really understand that. They used to wrestle with me, all voluntary by me, and play video games with me. They treated me like I was one of the group, even though they were over 10 years older than me on most cases. Not the craziest story, but a nice story for an only child. My babysitter let me play with her boobs when I was 8 or so. I'm not talking about a quick touchy-feely either. She let me handle those suckers, bra off and everything. She had known me since I was a baby, and I don't know if that makes it more weird or less weird. When I was in college, I was babysitting my boss's toddler son. We walked down to their neighborhood lake and saw this really pretty swan walking around. Then it walks toward us. Neato. I bet the little kid would get a kick out of seeing the swan. But now it's running toward us. Okay, at us. This thing was huge, almost eye level with me, and making a god-awful hissing. I grabbed the kid and ran the few blocks back to the house. The swan right behind us. I slammed the screen door shut just in time. The swan was still out for blood and mercilessly pecking the screen. When I was about 89 years old, I think, my parents would get my neighbor to come babysit me, my younger brother and sister. The babysitter was a 14-15-year-old girl. We had been neighbors for a while, so we were pretty good friends, I guess, and I think I kind of had a crush on her too. I can't remember how or when it first started, but eventually it turned into me fingering her pretty much every time she would come over, and even other times outside of babysitting. And being an 8-year-old, I didn't really know anything about sex and that stuff, so I had no idea what I was actually doing. I guess I just thought it was fun. LOL, thinking about it now, I realized how weird it actually is. When I was 11 or 12, I had a female babysitter 15 who was on the odd side. She was kinda weird, always a little off, looked at things differently. One night we're watching MTV and one of the girly videos was playing and she noticed something growing down there. After some talking, I let her see it and touch it. Seemed she had never seen a penis erect and was very curious. Felt weird, but good. Next visit she browsed over a movie, a porn she swiped from her parents. Long story short, we tried everything in the movie, thanks to my parents' fondness for drinking. On Saturday night and Friday night, the babysitter's willingness to watch me, and some batshit hormones, I had sex with her like 10,000 times or so over the next month. Yeah, literally as soon as my parents pulled out of the driveway we would start. Oh yeah, and neither one of us knew shit about condoms. Then one night my parents literally barged in the door half drunk and in balls deep in heather on the couch. Got real after that. Her parents came over, questioned us about how many times, who initiated it, and if I came in her. Our answers horrified them to the core. They left and I never saw her again. My mom called her mom a week later to see if she was pregnant. No. That was a tough year punishment wise for me. Years later I would learn that my father bragged about the whole incident to his buddies with great pride. One guy even shoved a beer in my hand at a cookout when I was 15, stating I was a man among men. My mom used to tell me that when she dropped me off to a friend's house when I am not in preschool, I used to run to their door and eagerly knock on the door. Whenever my mom's friend's daughter would come out, I'd kiss her directly on the lips, or she'd do the same. Years later, for some reason my mom told me that the girl was my cousin and I should stop doing that. But when we went to her 12th birthday party, I find out we weren't related and that my mom just wanted me to stop kissing her. My 4-year-old self got more kisses than my 27-year-old self. In 4th grade, I somehow ended up in a gifted program, Odyssey of the Mind. I'll be goddamned if I knew how our team of slackers made it to the state championship. Chaperone. My cousin informs me that he is headed outside to smoke a cigarette. That was the last anyone saw of him until 15 minutes before our bus came back home 2 days later. Hungover and probably high as fuck. He waltzed onto the bus like nothing was wrong. Parents and teachers were asking where he was all day long. He was supposed to keep an eye on us and bailed to snort coke, smoke weed, get drunk as fuck and more than likely, enjoy the company of questionable women. After asking him about it years later, he has no recollection of even going to Phoenix on a school trip. I was babysitting for a friend of my parents. They had 2 daughters around 6 and 8 years old. Before they left they said that the girls would want to sleep in the parents' room with the TV and that I could let them pick a movie to fall asleep to. They had a massive DVD collection but the girls happened to choose one of maybe 5 VHS tapes they owned. Obviously their parents hadn't thought about that and forgot to take the chicks with dicks tape out of the VCR. One summer when I was about 8 or 9, our new neighbors asked my older brother to babysit during the day. The kid was around my age, so we spent all our time eating junk food and playing Contra. One day I was over at the house and the dad was in the kitchen stacking massive amounts of Coke and Sprite 6 packs in the pantry. He told my brother and I that we could drink all the Coke we wanted, but never ever under any circumstance were we to touch the Sprite. Naturally, as soon as he left we got into the pantry and started putting cans of Sprite in the refrigerator. I reached on my tiptoes to get one last can and it hit the ground, spilling white powder all over the floor. I had no idea what it was, but it scared me for some reason, so I ran home and told my mom. The next day I was leaving my house to go to the neighbors and my mom stopped me at the door. She said don't go over there today. My brother was already there. Naturally as soon as my mother turned her back and went over to the neighbor's house. On my way over I heard my mom scream bloody murder after me. Just as I reached the door, several cars and vans pulled up to the house. I suddenly experienced what probably was my very first panic attack. I turned slowly around to the direction of the screaming to see a DA agent put a large gun to my mom's head and proceeded to force her on the ground at gunpoint. The dad came home at the very same time and flipped his shit. A 20-on-1 gunfight ensued. I was thrown to the ground and an officer covered my body with his, firing his gun the whole time. It felt like the shooting lasted an hour but was more like 45 seconds. The dad was dead, I was grounded, and my mom gave my brother a brand new bike. When I was about 17 I used to babysit a kid who was about 9 and his older brother who was about 14. It was a few doors down from my house and I had to stay overnight. I was there to look after the little one and put him to bed as his mum was at her boyfriend's house overnight. The older bro would have a maid round sometimes, and one night after I'd put the little one to bed I heard them talking about a bong. I said let's smoke. I got them so fucking high that the friend threw up and they both passed out. Needless to say, they loved me. The older brother convinced his little brother that I was the coolest guy ever so they would both routinely tell their mum that they hated her boyfriend staying round and that it was weird, which meant lots more babysitting for me. From that point the routine was, arrive, wrestle kid and put him to bed, go buy weed for them, get them high, keep all the weed when they pass out, wake up in morning, get paid handsomely, walk home 2 doors and go to bed. Sometimes I would invite a friend or 2 round because when you're 17 being king of the house feels boss. Now I have a regular job I know how awesome that one was. When I was a kid, my babysitter would watch me in her apartment, right across the hall from ours. She smoked weed a lot, and she would give me 1 or 2 tiny hits occasionally. Whenever she did, she'd unroll a huge piece of butcher paper, pull out a giant box of crayons, markers, watercolors, and colored pencils, and I'd lay on the floor and draw these crazy scenes of mythological beasts, beautiful meadows with colorful wildflowers, outer space scenes with crazy aliens, and who knows what else for hours on end. I actually loved it. I always felt safe, happy, and free around my babysitter. She always complimented my art and even hung some of it up in her apartment. My parents smoked weed occasionally, but I'm pretty sure they'd have drawn and quartered my babysitter if they knew what was going on. I mean, if I had a 7-year-old daughter and somebody let her smoke weed, I'd shove their bowl up their tailpipe. That said, She was my favorite babysitter, and as bizarre and endangering her methods were, I wouldn't be half as awesome as I am now if it weren't for her.